And welcome to this executive on the 10th of January 2023. For those of you that I have not met or spoken to in the last few days, I hope you all had a very peaceful and comfortable Christmas and a very happy New Year. I think there was a great deal of health issues around over that Christmas period, and I know a number of people actually were not well enough to really enjoy themselves, but then I'm sure they made up for it afterwards. So we have one agenda item. One is the apologies. Councillor Jan Goody has sent in her apologies. Agenda item 2 is leaders' announcements. Well, I've already said a few words, but I would actually like to ask a couple of my executive colleagues if they wish to say something. Can I start with Jonathan Kay, please? Councillor Kay?
Yes, thank you very much. We have at East Herts Council for the last few years Holocaust Memorial Day, which takes place in this council chamber on the 26th of January, which is a Thursday evening at 6:30. The last two have been on Zoom because of the pandemic. So this is the first one in 3 years. Among our guests will be the two deputy lieutenants of Hertfordshire who are from the Jewish community, and we'll talk about some of their experiences or experiences of their family. But our main guests are Vlada and Barbara, who are Ukrainian students living in Hertford. They go to Simon Bull School, and they'll be talking about their temporary living in Hertford away from the Ukraine and how they've been affected. And if anybody's interested in coming along, we need to know in advance who you are. So if anybody could just send an email to Esther Piper, that's esther.piper, P-I-P-E-R, at eastherts.gov.uk. And that'll be on Thursday night at 6:30, the 26th of January.
Thank you. Jonathan has very kindly always asked me to say a few words at these over the last few years, and it has now become, it's a very moving session. I think East Herts, I can't remember, it must be 6-7 years, more than that probably, that we're doing it. And it has now become established in the calendar of civic across Hertfordshire, actually. So
yeah, I think we've been doing it since 2016.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it is, for those of you who do wish to come, I would recommend you do, but you do need to register before you come. Councillor McAndrew, give us some brum brum news.
Yes, thank you, Lido. It gives me great pleasure to announce that East Herts District Council's vehicle fleet has gone green, with the replacement of all its diesel vans with a fleet of e-vehicles. The switch to Nissan Leaf e-cars will reduce the council's carbon footprint by 9 tonnes of CO2 each year and cut leasing costs. The fleet will consist of 5 Nissan Leaf e-vehicles. These are manufactured in the UK in Sunderland, Tyne and Wear, and will be leased for 5 years from Sinclair Financing and Leasing. The e-cars will be used across East Herts by council officers involved in services such as fly tipping enforcement, parks inspections, and leisure initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you. I think saying brum brum for an electric car isn't actually accurate at all. Having got an electric car, you have to be very careful not to run people over because they can't hear them. But anyway, I think this is an amazing, really good initiative, and I hopefully, I know that it will be well used and is an extremely a good way forward for this council to go. Can I ask any other members of the executive if there's anything they wish to say? Okay, great. If we can move on, please, to agenda item 3, which is the minutes of this executive on the 6th of December, which is on page 5 to 17. I'm happy to propose them. May I have a seconder, please?
I'm happy to propose. Thank you, Leader.
Okay.
That's a second, I mean. Sorry.
Okay. Katie, remind me, do we vote on these? Yes, okay. All those in favour? Anyone against? And no abstentions. Thank you very much indeed. It's always different if they've not gone through council. Anyway, declarations of interest, either from the executive or the members of other councillors who are here. No declarations of interest. Right, the next agenda item is the asset management review. This is in the separate document that was circulated separately. Councillor Williamson, please.
Thank you, Leader. Well, the paper presents a refresh of our asset management plan to cover the next 5-year period, and this sits alongside our capital strategy and potentially impacts on our MTFP. The plan is designed to ensure that all our property assets are performing to their optimum, whether these be our own offices, operational bases, or property we own as financial investment. We also have a wide collection of property assets which are generally legacies either from when we transferred our housing stock or even are those we inherited from our pre-1974 predecessors. The plan will evaluate how each of these assets contribute or otherwise to our corporate priorities and whether the best course of action is retention, investment or disposal. The plan covers governance of our property portfolio, and to this end we are setting up a new corporate assets group comprising key officers, and we are also recreating the member asset review group, which I will chair as this sits within my portfolio. Tonight we're being asked to endorse the draft plan to be reviewed by Audit and Governance, and I am pleased to move the single recommendation on page 3 to that effect. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much indeed. This was really interesting to read. I suppose the question mark is over whether or not you could read it because the print was quite small. But I think in principle it was it was well put together. So thank you to your team, Stephen, for putting it all together. There's a lot of work there actually, and it gives us a really good base now to look at exactly what the assets are within the council and what we need, what we should have and what we don't need. Are there any questions? Yeah, Councillor Pope.
Thank you. On page 5, paragraph 2.8, it talks about the public sector decarbonisation grant scheme. And it mentions about there's a further round of grants being opened up in sort of spring and summer 2023. We've had some money, I guess, from this grant scheme already. I wonder if you could just remind me how much we've had and has that been spent yet?
Stephen, are you able to take that or do you need to come back to us on that response?
I wasn't aware we'd had any money from it in the past, so I'd have to come back, I'm afraid.
Forgive me, that might be my mistake. Just the way it was worded, this was a second round of funding. I wondered if we had applied the first time around.
No, we haven't applied. We haven't applied to it yet. So, depending on whether we're staying here or not, then we would make an application to it.
Okay, that's all right. Thank you. Following on from that, at what point will it be decided whether we're going to make a bid or not? Because I think we've been working with consultants on, I know, with no fee basis, but I think it was still unclear at what point we'd make an application. And if we didn't, it mentions about having to renew the boiler. That's going to be quite a decent sized cost. Has that been allowed for in the medium term financial plan? Thank you. But going back to the grant side of things, at what point will that be decided?
Well, the decision that needs to be made first is whether or not what our office accommodation is to be. If it is to remain to be Warfields, and then we will apply for the grants in order to be upgrade the heating system and replace the boiler.
Councillor Buckmaster.
Yeah, just really maybe to add something around the funding rounds, because I know at county we've had previous funding rounds through Salix who administer, and I think the reference might be that this is a particular funding round of those schemes, not necessarily that something we've applied for already. So we're applying to a later scheme than those that have already been awarded. Thank you.
James, you're nodding. Is that how you understand it?
Yes, with my modern workspaces hat on as part of the transformation scheme, transformation program, we have been looking at this building, as members who are part of the stakeholder group will know. And Councillor Buckmaster is correct. There have been previous rounds where NHS trusts have gone in and got funding for their decarbonising. There'll be other councils who have been in. So just because it's a later round doesn't mean that we've been involved in all of them. We're only looking at this latest one.
Thank you. for
Thank
helping.
you.
Anything else, Mark?
Yeah, on page 15, it refers to, it's part of the section that talks about investment properties, and it mentions that the investment properties were forecast to generate an annual income in the region of 0.741 million in 21-22. Is that a forecast? Is that really a forecast number, or is that an actual number?
I believe that to be a forecast figures. The figures have not yet been finalised, but last year.
Thank you. And one last question. On page 24, it talks about the financial context. It mentions about external audits, and it talks about the valuations of the council's assets are subject to external audit each year, for which the council received an unqualified opinion. Obviously, we haven't really had a completed external audit for 1 or 2 years. Are we happy with that paragraph? It's still current.
Stephen, can you just take that? please?
We are very close to agreeing the accounts with EY for the 2021 financial year, and they are not questioning the asset valuation. And then we are hopeful that we'll move into 21-22 audit sometime in January, but I note EY didn't say which year January was in. And then obviously we're hoping to catch up eventually and getting back into the normal standard audit round. But so far we haven't had any serious challenges to our audit, to our asset valuations during the audit process.
Thank you very much indeed. Anything else, Mark? Okay, Councillor McAndrew, you want to say something?
Yeah, it's on page 14, 5.2, Pontingford Service Centre. It's up for renewal in 2026. And I'm just going to say, with Harlow Gilson Garden Town and the dynamics changing in the collection of the waste service and concentration of households within the district to be in the southern part, it's appropriate that the correct location, which provides reduced mileage, good recruitment prospects, is considered along with the county's eastern region waste disposal site. Pontingford may not be the prime location for many reasons. So,
Thank you. Just for clarity for the minutes, this is actually page 25 of the council papers, and it was page 14 of the report itself. Okay. Anything from anybody else? No. Okay. So we have one recommendation which has been proposed by Councillor Williamson, and a seconder, please.
to second.
Excellent. All those in favour of the? Okay. All in favour. Anyone against? Anyone abstaining? No. Thank you. If we now go on to agenda item 6, which is the annual Treasury Management Review, we now go back to the main agenda, which is page 18 to 47. Councillor Williamson, please.
Thank you, Leader. Well, suffice to say, we are required to review our treasury management annually in line with SIPFA's codes of practice. The review was considered by A&G in November, who had no particular comment. So our recommendation tonight is that we approve this to go forward to full council. So I'm happy to move the single recommendation on page 18. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions? Councillor Pope, anything you want to add?
No, thank you, Chairman.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks. Anything from anybody else? No? Okay, so the paper has been moved by Councillor Williamson. May I have a seconder, please?
I'm very happy to second that.
Thank you,
Leader.
Councillor Boylan. All those in favour? Anyone against or abstaining? Thank you very much indeed. If we now move to agenda item 7, which is on page 48. This is the East Herts East Herts UK Shared Prosperity Fund and the Rural Prosperity Fund, which I will introduce, but I know other colleagues wish to make some comments. The recommendations are on page 48 and 49, and there are 2 of them, A and B, and we will go through them in brief. Now, this fund, UK Shared Prosperity Fund, from the UK government, is a replacement for various structural funds from the EU following Brexit and the removal of those grants. We are using 3 overall investment priorities: community in place, local business, people and skills. And our interventions are prescribed, and we have agreed through consultation with community groups, representatives, businesses and our MPs as to what we should be doing. Our funding allocation in total is 1.127 million, of which £215,186 has to be spent by March 23. So our initial tranche of activities will be totally in oven-ready schemes and based around the cultural strategy, the climate change strategy, town and village centres and business support. Details of all these proposals are given from page 55 through to page 66, where these items are detailed out. This paper also covers a Rural Prosperity Fund, which came out in September, of an additional 110 million and is aimed at capital projects for improving services, technology and infrastructure for rural businesses. We can also use it for populations within our towns and villages where the populations are less than 30,000. Which covers all of our towns and villages in East Herts, except for Bishop Stortford and Hertford. We are recommending that half of that 472 million is 1,000 is available to East Herts to be used for town, village and centre improvements, and the other half for businesses. So they will be used in conjunction with the projects that we've already talked about under the UK Share Prosperity Fund. The UK Share Prosperity Fund is given in detail in this paper because we haven't talked about it a great deal. It's been something that government has been floating around for probably 2 years now, and it only came out in the middle of last year. And I'd like to thank Ben Wood and his team for actually pulling together, as always, in a very short period of time. We had a very good consultation programme over at where there were probably 30, 40 representatives, businesses and community groups who were very helpful in helping us reach our conclusions as to where we should spend our money. I think this is just for the first year. We've got it for another 2 years. It's a mixture of revenue and capital, which is always useful on the revenue side. And then in further consultation, different projects will come forward in the coming 2 years. So, Councillor Buckmaster, is that something you wish to add?
Yes, thank you, Leader, and I'm also happy to second. I'm really pleased to see this level of funding we have the opportunity to use. As you mentioned, the face-to-face community engagement was really useful and really important. So I'm really glad that we were able to do that. I think you mentioned that there's a certain amount of capital and revenue. I think the majority from memory is revenue, but I understand from Ben that there could be some flexibility around that as we go forward. I think the really useful thing is the ability to focus, as you've mentioned, on some of our rural towns and parishes, the focus on the cultural strategy, which is going to be very helpful because that's fully developed now. And I think we've found from previous relatively modest funding rounds for things like Forever Active over previous years that actually it does engage the community. We get a lot of volunteering, a lot of support, and has a multiplier effect. And then you end up with activities that are then sustainable in their own right. And I think the same thing will apply to support for climate change in working with communities. So lots of good things in here. And I think those levels of funding will actually make a big difference to those communities. So very good thing to have. Thank you, Leader.
No, it's it is, and I think East Herts has been relatively lucky in, well, no, not lucky. It is appropriate that we have received some substantial sums of money here, which will enable us to improve and ensure the quality of life of our residents. Okay, Councillor Kay, is there something you wish to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very encouraging that we've got one of the highest allocations in the country in East Hart, and that's terrific. And I really, as Eric had said, think it's really good that smaller towns and our villages should benefit from this, perhaps particularly from the villages from the Rural Prosperity Fund. But also, you know, it involves the business support programs, climate change strategy, and the cultural strategy. And there are within the document some examples like East Hart's Pride event that took place last year. And that was just in Bishop Stortford. It was very successful, but I know they're looking to roll it out to other parts of East Hart, including Hertford and Ware, and other projects like the Inclusive Theatre project. So I think this is really encouraging, and very much, you know, support this.
Great, thank you. Anybody else wish to add anything? No? Okay, so if I can take you to the recommendations which are on page 48 and 49, they are quite detailed recommendations, but unless I'm advised that I need to read them out, I would ask that they are taken in block. The paper's already been seconded by Councillor Buckmaster, so all those in favour? Thank you. Anyone against? Anyone abstaining? In that case, no, this is a great piece of work. So thank you very much indeed, Ben, and the other officers who put this together. And it's nice to know that this is something that will also continue for 2 years. So we can look forward to some really great stuff coming forward. Agenda item 8 is urgent business. I haven't been notified of any. So in that case, the meeting closes at 7:20.